Hello and welcome to All Killer No Filler. It is Friday. I'm a tiny bit hungover, but I'm incredibly excited to be chatting with our senior media buying team across both our Facebook ads and our Google ads platforms about Facebook and Google ads in the post iOS 14.5 landscape. What's changed, what challenges there are, what we're seeing that's working best in the space right now. But first, a little housekeeping. Number one, I just wanted to say thank you to all of the listeners out there. We just crossed 60,000 listens of the podcast in our first year, which is extremely exciting for us. I want to thank you so much. If you haven't yet, make sure you go and rate the podcast. Make sure you share it with friends when you find something that helps you. And yeah, let's keep, 100,000 is well within reach here. So let's get that within Q3. That's my goal. And then because we have this many amazing listeners, and because Q3 is upon us, we also have our advertising packages available that we're just starting to sell. Our header slots will sell out very quickly. So if you're in the audience listening, or if you know someone who might want to advertise, who might want to reach 36,000 D2C fanatics in our newsletter or via this podcast, then make sure that they reach out on our website at directtoconsumer.co. And again, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe. How are the smartest brands winning? They're using Perpetua. Perpetua saves hours of time spent in the weeds of tactical campaign management so marketers can focus on what really matters, strategically growing their business. Find out why brands like Crocs and Beekeepers Naturals trust Perpetua to accelerate the growth of their e-commerce businesses across channels like Amazon, Instacart, Walmart, Target, and more. Visit perpetua.io. That's perpetua.io to learn more about how they can help you grow. That's perpetua.io. Now, don't want to keep these guys waiting any longer. Nate, let's start with you as our lead Facebook media buyer. What are we seeing on Facebook ads right now in the post iOS 14.5? What has been the impact that you've seen, let's say?
Yeah, I would say the biggest impact was the initial stuff. It was kind of like a little bit of a roller coaster. Like right when iOS came out, I feel like everybody kind of saw this big jump. And I think part of that was because we were starting to see conversions fire on the day of conversion rather than impression. So it just kind of boosted day of stats. And then we kind of saw around like week 2 after it came out, we kind of started seeing a bigger dip. And I think this is just performance fluctuations because of the algorithm trying to adjust. But it seems that we're seeing kind of stabilization now. So performance is kind of getting back to normal levels. Obviously, there's some nuances that Taylor can jump into when it comes to like longer term purchase decisions and the disappearing of the 28-day window. But overall, I think for the most part, like we're starting to stabilize now, and it looks pretty decent overall. So
that's great. What about data fidelity? I know that there's issues on the reporting side of things where you can't always get the totals to fill out. You're not actually getting data on, what countries with, your conversions are happening in, for instance. I'd just be interested in your overall take. And then I know that we actually have a hack that we use as a company right now that we're actually working on with Facebook for how to actually make some of these totals, these columns total. We should share that hack on this podcast.
100%.
Taylor, what are you seeing? Yeah, Nate, what are you seeing with data fidelity?
Honestly, there's a couple like really brutal things that I probably should have just mentioned. But the first is that because we're now looking at a 7-day window, 28 days obviously gone. But then, so there's two, or I guess there's 3 left, but two main ones left. 1-day click, 1-day view, 7-day click, 1-day view. And if you had ad sets paused when it flipped over, when iOS first came out, those automatically defaulted to 1-day click, 1-day view. And then the rest of your campaigns that were live would have went down to 7-day click, 1-day view. And so Facebook can't tally up in Ads Manager the totals between those 2 attribution windows. And so Ads Manager, I'm sure a lot of people are noticing, isn't tallying up totals of metrics at the bottom. And you actually have to jump into the ad set or ad level to see those metrics. One workaround there is using custom reports. It's a little bit finicky because custom reports also can't standardize attribution windows in one single ad account across campaigns. So the hack that we've come up with is to either use a separate ad account that's not running or build a second ad account that's not running. Select the 2 for custom reports, build your custom report with the metrics you need to see, standardize the attribution window and the currency across those ad accounts, and then you'll be able to see holistically all the data in the ad account you're trying to look at, and it will total at the bottom for you. It's just a little bit finicky and kind of hectic to try and build out.
I think we're going to be writing about this in the newsletter, just putting it out there for everyone. We'll create a blog post where we can, help people understand exactly how to do this with screenshots, because it's also, by the time we get that out, it's possible Facebook will have fixed it, because I know they're looking at fixing it right now. But I think it's a really interesting hack. Taylor,
Yeah.
where were you going with what you're seeing?
Yeah, so I mean, I echo a lot of Nate's points there. We've seen it kind of affect brands differently depending on really the entire purchase journey. So, for example, brands that where a lot of sales fall between 8 days and 28 days from engaging with a Facebook ad, we're seeing those ones heavily impacted by the phasing out of that window. And then there's elements at play too, like the potential within, if a brand is leaning towards like iOS traffic, for example, there may be a bigger impact than one that's more balanced or leaning towards Android or other devices. So those are kind of the big things there. But with all of that said, no matter what, like we're still seeing a ton of value from the quality of the traffic. It's really just a matter of how do we measure that holistically now in those cases, or depending on what the brand is kind of going through with regards to that.
Nice. Okay, we're going to get into how to measure what's going on in a little bit, but let's actually jump over to the Google world. And from a high level, Google gentlemen, has iOS 14.5 impacted things at all? Who wants to answer that? Saul.
I'll start, and just in a more general sense, I don't think it has really had a big impact on us yet. Mostly on the search side, things have essentially stayed the same. It's a lot of first party data, right? So there's no issues there. And then Google has been pretty good in using AI over the last little bit to model conversion tracking, and our bigger some of our bigger accounts are already on data-driven attribution that uses machine learning to correctly attribute purchases. And Google just started also adding, it didn't used to, but now they're adding display, YouTube, and discovery to that data-driven attribution. So that helps. So yeah, in general, just from my point of view, it hasn't been as we don't run many app clients, so that also takes that part of the equation out. We don't have to deal with that type thing.
And zero loss in data fidelity. You're not having any issues with data not being attributed to the right rows or columns.
I haven't seen that. No, I don't know, Richard.
No, nothing like that at all, which has been super nice. And just to reiterate what Saul says, a lot of our clients are kind of e-commerce clients and sort of more general lead gen, so they're not running an awful lot of app campaigns, and we've definitely escaped the worst of it because of that. And I think if we'd been running app campaigns, there's a lot that we would have needed to have done. And even digging in Google Analytics and having a look at iOS as a operating system and how it's been affected across most of our clients, and there's been very little impact from a kind of data point of view. And I think Google definitely has their modeling has been decent, and they've been really upping their modeling game, if that's the right terminology. And their launch of Google Analytics 4, which has been fairly recent, they're upping their modeling even more with GA4. So that'll definitely be one pretty compelling reason for people to move from GA3 to GA4 in due course, just because the modeling is going to be much better in GA4.
Nice. Any other reasons off the top of your head why this is going to be a seminal release of GA4?
It's just a better platform. There was a lot of kind of limitations within GA3, but I think the main driver behind it has been attribution, and as Saul mentioned there, the whole data-driven thing is a huge improvement over what was there before. And cool. Certainly what we're seeing in terms of kind of view through conversions that we would have looked at in the past, but particularly for display campaigns, is that now that we've got better access to better attribution, then we're actually seeing that those campaigns weren't as good as we thought they might have been. Now that we've got this data-driven attribution, so definitely that would be the main driver.
Very cool. Taylor, let's jump into attribution a little bit. I know you've been working on an interesting project, mapping that customer journey and trying to figure things out. So set the context in terms of where we're at right now in the post iOS 14 landscape and attribution and what we're doing about it.
Yeah, so Facebook rolled out their modeling system over a month ago now. So we're, as Nate kind of mentioned there too, we saw that the biggest shift kind of initially, and since then things have started to kind of settle in a bit further. But with that said, we've definitely noticed in cases where that journey differs, like potentially, if it's an extended journey and things like that, as being a big part of it from the Facebook side, looking to scale efficiently. That's where we've noticed shifts and where we're kind of leaning into historic data as well as the best practices established, combined with taking a step back outside of the platform itself too, and looking at how we're impacting the overall brand's growth with basically a system of signals, combining all the different factors and how we with all of our platform teams work together to drive those results for the brand. So that's a bit of a vague way of explaining it, but for some kind of added context, we're looking at different patterns and trends and gap analysis between like the Facebook platform, Google Ads, other platforms we use, things like analytics, Shopify itself, and really just going deep on kind of comparing that data and then leveraging basically every signal and tool we can to make the best decisions for ensuring we're feeding that funnel of traffic.
What's our stack for that?
Yeah, so in terms of the stack, it's at this point we're working on kind of blending that data together through like shared views, but a lot of it is us kind of leveraging our know-how to dive into each platform and determine what we're looking at between them to compare. There's like the other side of that too that's quite exciting is what we can see within our Rubik's tool as well, based on being able to drill into UTM and things like that as well on the CRO side, and even leverage the campaign stuff there. So it's definitely a lot to like process on a regular basis, looking at it all. But we are seeing a lot of added benefit from ensuring that we're guiding our strategy by comparing all of these and how are we actually feeding people to the brands that we're working with, based on, we're still like, I'm still looking at ROAS constantly, and that's still a guiding principle. I'm still looking at angle testing and seeing how we can make it as efficient as possible, but we're leveraging all of this combined in a way that that has been driving great results for moving in the direction that we want to with brands.
And so then to put it simply, are we trying to put it into place sort of a fractional attribution system where we have very clear assists and conversions, or like what is that? What is the simplest way of sort of like, what is the output that we'll get from this system in a simple way?
That's exactly it. Part of that too is that we're looking at like the assisted conversions reports and analytics and stuff like that too. So basically that's a simple way of putting it, and looking at like, if we're taking certain actions on Google, we want to make sure that Facebook's supporting those. And it's kind of this ecosystem idea of really optimizing and scaling it that way. So yeah, it's been really exciting. I'm getting to communicate with Richard, Saul, and teams on other platforms constantly, and we're working together to build these systems and scale brands efficiently, like we always have, just under this kind of new direction of attribution and growth for platforms.
And it's probably going to look good on Google, because I know Google long, not to poke the feud here, but Google has the longstanding belief that as an intent-based platform, they do have a lot of those key first touches. Yeah, that's what, or the last, quite often the last touch as well. What do you guys think that this attribution model will reveal Google is, should be getting more value than it currently gets credit for?
Oh, always, Eric, always.
Let's see your tattoo. Let's see your.
No, I think it's
yeah.
I think Google Analytics was always because it was last click based, and Facebook and other platforms we're obviously driving a lot of top of funnel traffic. There was always kind of this distrust of what Google Analytics was saying, and it was another Google Google tool. Surely Google's skewing it in their favor, and we can't believe that everything it says. And for sure, it's not 100% accurate. But I think, as Taylor said there, there is some great information in there, and while you don't take it, a complete, it's not 100% the truth. But if you start then looking at the signals that it contains in terms of, pages per session, time on site, bounce rates, things like that, and then start to look at it, from a platform, point of view. What's our platform saying? What's Facebook's platform saying? What's Google Analytics saying? Then you bring all these things together, and suddenly, I think that there will be much more, maybe not reliance, but we'll be getting good indicators from Google Analytics now moving forward that we probably in the past would have gone, yeah, maybe not. I think we're going to need to look at those now.
And what's it allow us to do? It allows us to invest in the right areas and to be able to spend into the void, or spend into areas where, you may not see profitability right away, but you have the data to understand that if you do spend that way, strategically, it'll have dividends. Would you say that's right, Taylor?
Yep, that's exactly it, really. And I mean, at the end of the day, we want to see that immediate profitability as our kind of goal, but we also want to build the brand and do what's best for the brand, short term and long term. And so far, this has been proving quite strong in terms of some of the lift reports we've been able to look at and compare as well, and through these efforts so far.
Nice. Nate, I was hearing earlier about the way that you're currently thinking about running Facebook campaigns, and I tried to make it about iOS 14, and you're just like, this isn't even about iOS 14, but I wanted to make sure you had your opportunity to talk a little bit about what you're seeing work well in terms of campaign structure on Facebook ads right now.
For sure. Yeah. First off, I think even before jumping into that, I would just basically follow up on what Taylor's saying, but it's super important right now to look holistically at what's going on, rather than just look at Facebook, look at Google, look at analytics and try and separate it all. One of the, and Taylor was talking about kind of these signal tests we're running, and one of the main signals we're looking for right now is kind of that ratio between spend and Shopify or CRM revenue. And basically by looking at that, and this obviously works better on mainly Facebook brands, if the majority of their spend is coming from Facebook. You can kind of take a look at that, and if you see the ratio increase in the favor of spend, so spend is taking up a bigger piece of that pie, as opposed to Shopify revenue, then you aren't actually driving the same value for the ad spend. And so a lot of what we're seeing is that ratio is staying fairly steady. There are times where we're seeing within that 7-day attribution window, it does look like we're losing potentially 5 to 10% of Facebook attribution. But overall, it doesn't look like it's a massive chunk. And I think the other big consideration there is the loss of the 8 to 28 days, like Taylor was saying. And with products that are more expensive and take a little bit more time to purchase, you're going to see a bigger drop there. So it's really important to monitor those signals at all times, so you can kind of keep on top of, client expectations and your own, in terms of knowing that what you're doing is still providing a lot of value.
Nice. Thank you for making it about iOS 14. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but yeah, on the campaign side, honestly, not a ton has changed in terms of what we're doing. I would say one thing is that we've seen over the past few weeks a little bit of a drop off in terms of horizontal scalability. So what we're doing right now is a lot of consolidation among our campaigns, and trying to really force budgets down a path of least resistance and where our campaigns can gain the most momentum, rather than thin out our budgets. There was a lot of clients and brands had to pull back a little bit over the past couple of weeks because they were seeing that volatility. And so while doing that, you don't want to maintain the same structure. You really want to consolidate, make sure that you're spending efficiently and where it matters most.
Is it changing at all how testing is working? Is it making, gold coin testing, a methodology that we use, is it making it any less effective, or is it making it even more relevant?
I definitely don't think it's making it less effective. I think there are a few hurdles, and one of the big things that we've seen is brand new test campaigns have started to see, it seems, and Taylor, I think you can back me up on this, they're seeing a higher cost per click, slightly higher CPMs, click-through rates are down a bit. But it only really seems to be on a brand new campaign for the first few days. And so there's a couple things to do Sometimes it works to just literally ride out those first few days. And then other times we're moving, like I said, to a more consolidated structure where we're testing ads in campaigns that have already had spend before. And it seems to make a little bit of a difference. So rather than build out all campaigns, and don't get me wrong, we're doing multiple strategies. We're basically testing everything. We're still doing our horizontal testing. But what we are seeing work a lot of the time is testing ads and campaigns that have already had spend, and rather than testing 5 ads in one campaign at once, we'll test one new ad in a campaign that's been running for a week or two.
Nice, excellent. Any value bombs over there for you guys? Are pretty smug over there. Not affected by iOS 14. Google's smooth and smooth sailing. Any value bombs to leave the audience with that you're seeing kind of working well in your workflows?
I think, well, I mean, we won't be quite so smug. The display network is definitely proving to be a bit of an issue for some of our clients. Some of our clients have kind of sailed through, and they haven't had any major issues. But we definitely, I think, probably across the board, we're seeing more of a dip in display network performance. Top of funnels are really getting to be a struggle. Retargeting, bottom of funnel, you can eke out some performance there, but it's definitely getting harder. And so I think what's forcing us to do is to look at non-display. So we're now looking at discovery as a more important channel, and I think increasingly probably YouTube is the most important channel. The data that we're seeing from assisted conversions and direct conversions, that's where the big opportunity is. And I think rather than us spending a whole lot of time on display, which we probably would have in the past, we're kind of just nearly skipping that and going, okay, what can we do to get YouTube content up and running? Because that's where the big opportunity is for us.
That's the top of funnel of the whole Google environment. How 1 out of every 2 kids is watching 8 hours of YouTube a day at this point. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is we have to remember that even though YouTube has audiences and all those things that also have third-party data, it's still keyword based, right? It's the second search engine after Google, so that helps a lot with not only targeting but also keeping things moving along type thing.
Nice. And then last just open question. So imagine a hypothetical story. You hear of a high-end e-commerce brand cutting their Facebook budget in half, but having no discernible impact on their top line sales. Where do your thoughts go when you hear something like that, Nate?
Yeah, I would first question how well or poorly they were doing on Facebook prior to cutting their spend. Because the worse they were doing, the less the impact they're going to see by dropping spend, obviously. And then second, I would question, like, how long of a time did they take to make that decision of, oh, we're not actually seeing a drop? Was it like the next day they didn't see a drop and they were like, oh, we don't need Facebook? Or was it a month? Because we've definitely run tests where with some brands during different times of the year where maybe they don't need as much Facebook spend. We've done tests where we've pulled back 50 to 75% for a month or two, and depending on the length of that purchase decision, we've seen definitely like huge taper offs in terms of just overall organic. Google affiliates, every other channel basically suffers when Facebook stops because we're driving so much top of funnel traffic. But it definitely takes longer than a day or even a week, because you're going to have, if you were spending any significant amount of money on the platform, you're going to have sent a ton of traffic. You're retargeting audiences, and the audiences that are going to come back organically are still going to do that regardless of being hit by Facebook ads, for the foreseeable future, right? So it takes a little bit of time for sure.
And this is, I'm not on that Facebook conversation, but just for the sake of debate and correlation, it's not causation, etc., etc. It also depends on how much money they were spending on Facebook as part of their whole media plan, right? Like, if they're spending $2 million on influencers and $500,000 on Facebook, and then they cut Facebook back by half, well, and they still spend $2 million on influencers, well, then it's true.
I think the money did go to influencers, by the way, in this case.
So I don't know. To me, you need to look at
so many
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some factors you can't just say, oh yeah, I cut it and it's nothing. So.
But when you hear they took it out of Facebook because it wasn't working, they put it into influencers. As a Pilot House person, your mind has to go into whitelist.
You got to combine them.
You got to combine them. You got to whitelist. You got to use that UGC. And in this phantom test case that we've just done, if you're listening, that's what we strongly recommend you do. In a totally separate note, if anyone out there wants to work with these big brains, you just got to go to pilothouse.co and fill out the contact form and discuss about how we can help scale your brand. And until then, we'll just keep putting out value every week, getting together on Fridays for these fun all killer no fillers. I want to thank everyone for coming on today. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. So now I do the outro. So you guys can stay for the outro. You can go for the outro. The music starts coming on now. And I'll tell everyone that they got to subscribe to the newsletter at directtoconsumer.co. That's a big one. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Anything else in the outro from you guys?
Nope, all good for me.
Nice.
All
Okay.
good.
Well, thanks for sticking around, everyone. Peace.
See ya.
Sir.
Yeah, see you guys. It's actually really awkward when people stick around when I'm doing the outro because they think I'm talking to them, but really, still talking to you guys. I want to thank you again. 60,000 listens. Amazing. We'll get to 100,000 right quick here. I'm very excited about that. And if you are an advertiser, reach out to us on the advertiser form at directtoconsumer.co/advertise. And we'd love to hear from you and tell you all about our Q3 packages. All right, everyone have a great weekend. We can just relax now. Okay, peace.